menopause and enter yourself. This is not about resistance. It's about reverence. In a world that moves too fast, we have been taught that to offer ourselves is an act of surrender. But I say to you, the true surrender is to your own awareness. For only from that place can you truly invite another in. When you breathe deeply into your own presence before any intimate moment, you're not just connecting bodies, you're aligning energies, and that is what causes trembling. Not from arousal alone, but from awe. It's not the curve of your body that he remembers. It's the stillness behind your eyes, the silence before your yes. And so this talk is not about what to do to him. It is about what to be within you, so that your presence is the deepest touch he ever feels. Before the body opens, the mind must return home. We live in a world that glorifies momentum, movement, progress, performance. But when it comes to intimacy, it is not speed that deepens connection, it is stillness. A stillness so rare, it feels sacred. A stillness not of absence, but of fullness. This is the kind of stillness that comes not from stopping, but from arriving. Not in front of the other, but within yourself. Right before someone enters your physical space, you have a choice to be passive or to be present. And presence is never passive. It is the highest form of participation. It says, I am here not to impress, not to perform, but to experience fully what is unfolding. Let us reflect on something simple. Have you ever seen two people sit together and say nothing, yet the air around them is filled with meaning? That's presence. That's alignment. That's stillness speaking louder than sound. In neuroscience, we find that when two people are emotionally present, their brains begin to sync in a phenomenon called neural resonance. This isn't poetry, it's measurable. Brain scans show that during moments of deep connection, such as eye contact or synchronized breathing, the prefrontal cortex, the seat of empathy, decision-making, and awareness activates. We're literally tuning into each other's frequencies. And this tuning does not begin with words. It begins with attention. The kind that is free from performance. The kind that listens with the whole body. Imagine a woman, an elder perhaps, who has spent decades learning the patterns of her body, the rise and fall of her emotions, the rhythm of her thoughts. When her partner reaches for her, she does not rush to respond. She breathes, she softens, not in weakness, but in grounded readiness. That moment of stillness before closeness, that pause is not hesitation, it is wisdom. It says, I know myself, and I choose to be known now, not out of need, but out of fullness. This is where true power lies, in conscious stillness. Now, contrast this with a moment driven by urgency. When people rush toward intimacy, thinking closeness can fix loneliness or desire can replace connection. The body might be present, but the soul lags behind. And what lingers afterward is not fulfillment, but confusion. Because something vital was skipped, the inner check-in, the moment of self-entry. In Eastern philosophy, before one enters the temple, one must first bow, not to the structure, but to the sacredness of the moment. What if your body is that temple? And what if that pause before entry, emotional or physical, is your bow, a quiet honoring of yourself as something sacred, not transactional? In the West, we often ask, what can I do to make them want me more? But the more powerful question is, what do I bring into this space that already has value? And that value, your energy, your peace, your groundedness, is not something to fabricate. It is something to uncover beneath the layers of noise. That is why the stillness before intimacy is not emptiness. It is presence. Presence that says, before I let you into my body, I have already come home to myself. Think of the lion in the wild. It doesn't rush. It moves with certainty, calm, and grace. The lion doesn't need to roar to prove its power. Its very silence communicates confidence. That's what true stillness is. Not disengagement, but embodied presence. And so, the next time you find yourself approaching a moment of closeness with someone, pause. Not as a tactic, but as a truth. Ask yourself, what energy do I carry in this moment? What state is my nervous system in? What are my intentions? Not just for them, but for myself. Because your body is not a tool to be used. It is a space to be respected. And in that moment of pause, you may feel something ancient awaken, a whisper from within saying, let them enter not your body first, but your awareness. Let them meet the stillness in you before they ever touch your skin. This is what causes a man, or anyone, to tremble, not because of what they are taking from you, but because of what you are being in front of them. Let us now move deeper. Your energy teaches before your words do. There is something invisible we all carry, a field of presence. Call it vibration, call it aura, or simply call it a mood. Whatever the term, we know its power. You can feel when someone walks into the room with anxiety. You can sense when someone carries peace. Long before a word is spoken, your nervous system has already interpreted the person's state of being. This is not mysticism, it's neuroscience. Your body is constantly scanning the environment for safety, belonging, and authenticity. This is known as neuroception, the brain's unconscious ability to detect threats or harmony in your surroundings. And it's why your energy matters more than your appearance or your words. Because others don't respond to your image, they respond to your state. Have you ever tried to say the right thing, but still been misunderstood? It wasn't the words, it was the frequency behind them. You may have said, I'm fine, but your energy said, I'm hurt. You may have smiled, but your body tensed, and the other person responded not to your face, but to your field. This is especially true in intimacy, because in that space, the masks fall. The mind might try to lead, but the body doesn't lie. And if there is tension, fear, or unresolved emotion inside of you, it will be felt, even if not consciously interpreted. This is why the best preparation for connection is not external. It is internal alignment. I once heard a story about a woman who, after years of chasing approval, chose to spend 6 months in complete solitude, not to isolate herself, but to reintroduce herself to herself. She meditated daily, walked in nature, journaled her thoughts, and slowly learned her body's natural rhythms. When she returned to the world, people responded to her differently, not because she looked different, but because she carried something, a calm, a depth, a silent confidence. One man told her, being around you makes me feel like I've finally stopped running. And she smiled, not at the compliment, but at the truth behind it. Because her energy was teaching others to slow down, to feel again. Your energy can do the same. It already does. This is why emotional self-regulation is the highest form of relationship preparation. When you become a calm nervous system, you become medicine to a world addicted to urgency, and people are drawn to that. Not for entertainment, but for healing. Let us explore how this works physiologically. When you enter a space with calm and clarity, your parasympathetic nervous system, the rest and digest response, becomes active. Your breath slows, your muscles soften, your body communicates, I am safe. And the person near you, through co-regulation, often mirrors that state. Their breath slows, their heartbeat steadies, their mind calms. This is resonance. This is nervous system intimacy. This is how your being becomes the true experience. There's a well-known study where infants, when separated briefly from their mothers, showed distress. But those who returned to mothers who were calm and emotionally available recovered quickly. Why? Because the mother's energy restored the infant's safety. Now ask yourself, what energy are you offering the people you draw close to? Not as a parent, as a partner, as a friend, as a soul. You see, every person you meet is carrying invisible weights, memories, fears, old wounds. But when they encounter someone who is present, grounded, and safety, something in them relaxes. Not because you fixed them, but because you didn't try to be anything. You simply were. And that being is what we often mistake for chemistry. But real chemistry is not excitement. It's safety disguised as magnetism. It's not the high, it's the harmony. So the question returns again and again. How do you enter the room? How do you show up, not just physically, but energetically? Do you enter a moment with hunger, hoping someone else will fulfill you? Or do you arrive with fullness, offering your presence like a gift? The latter is what makes another tremble, not out of overwhelm, but out of reverence, because they are not just touching a body, they are meeting a presence. And presence leaves fingerprints on the soul. Let's consider another story. A man once told of meeting a woman at a retreat. She was quiet, not shy, quiet. She listened more than she spoke, and when she finally did speak, it was with clarity. Her gaze was unwavering, not confrontational, just aware. The man said, "When I sat near her, I forgot what I wanted to say, not because I was nervous, but because I didn't need to say anything." He trembled, not from desire, but from recognition. He saw something in her that he had been searching for in achievements, noise, and performance, peace. And she didn't do anything special. She just was. You don't need to be louder, more provocative, or more pleasing to be unforgettable. You need to be real. You need to be present. You need to be you, without apology. Because before the words come, before the touch comes, your energy has already arrived, and that is what the soul remembers. Long after the body rests, let us continue deeper. Intention is louder than action. So often we believe that what makes an impression in a relationship is what we do, how we touch, what we say, the gestures we make. But time and time again, life reveals that what truly penetrates the heart is not the outer motion, but the inner motive. A touch given from obligation does not warm the skin. A word spoken to impress does not settle in the soul. But when your actions flow from aligned intention, they carry a subtle weight. Not heavy, but rooted. There is a wisdom in ancient traditions that speaks of the concept of Wu Wei, effortless action. It is not inaction, but right action. Action that arises from clarity, not control, from presence, not performance. When you move with intention, there is no need to overdo. Your presence communicates more than your performance ever could. A woman once shared a story of how she sat across from her partner one evening. They were eating quietly, no particular discussion taking place. But she had set an intention before dinner. Let me bring peace to this space. Let me carry no anxiety forward from my day. She breathed slowly before sitting at the table, checked in with herself, and dropped into presence. She didn't announce it. She simply embodied it. After dinner, her partner turned to her and said, "I don't know what changed, but this evening felt healing." She hadn't done anything outwardly special. No romantic effort, no grand discussion, just intention. And the intention was received, not by the ears, but by the nervous system. This is how intimacy works on its deepest levels. When your mind is scattered, your words come from that chaos. When your emotions are reactive, your touch carries that urgency. But when your center is steady, your energy holds others. You become an anchor, not only for yourself, but for the connection you are cultivating. Intention doesn't mean manipulation. It's not about setting an inner agenda for the other. True intention is a question of clarity within. Why am I here? What am I offering in this moment? Am I moving from truth or from fear? The energy behind our choices always becomes the tone of the relationship. And this tone, though invisible, becomes the emotional environment in which love either grows or wilts. We've all felt it being in the same space as someone who seems kind, says the right things, does what is expected, but something feels off. It's not what they do. It's why they're doing it. The motive is hidden, but the body senses it. The human nervous system is a sensitive instrument, always listening beneath the surface. This is not just philosophy, it's biology. Through a complex system called the vagus nerve, we interpret tone, body language, and subtle cues far faster than we interpret spoken language. This subconscious process explains why some people exhaust us while others calm us. The reason lies not in what they're doing, but in the energy behind what they're doing. It's not about showing love, it's about being love. Let us pause on that phrase. Because being love is not easy. It requires the courage to let go of the masks, to show up from truth, not from image. And in moments of intimacy, this matters more than ever. When we approach closeness, emotional or physical, without clear intention, we are often led by default patterns, the desire to be accepted, the need to be desired, the fear of rejection. These hidden motives pollute the purity of the connection. And what should be sacred becomes transactional. But when intention is set from the heart, when it says, I want to share, not to earn something, but to express what is already full within me, the entire frequency changes. In relationships, this is the difference between connection and consumption. When someone touches you with the intention to get something, it feels draining. But when someone touches you with the intention to give, it feels nourishing. That subtle shift, only detectable by the soul, is what changes everything. Imagine entering a moment of intimacy after silently reminding yourself, I am not here to prove, I am not here to win, I am here to meet, to witness, to share. That kind of presence becomes unforgettable. It lingers, not as a memory of the body, but as a scent of the spirit. There is a saying, what comes from the heart enters the heart. But there's a deeper layer. What comes from a centered intention becomes medicine to a wounded world. And in today's world, where so many are touched but rarely felt, where many speak but few communicate, your clear, rooted intention becomes a rare and powerful gift. But how do we cultivate such intention? The answer is not in trying harder, but in slowing down, in the pause before action, the breath before touch, the silence before speech. That's where intention takes form. It is there, in that brief moment of awareness, that you get to ask, what energy am I bringing forward? And the answer to that question sets the tone for everything that follows. This is why every meaningful act begins in stillness, not because stillness is passive, but because it is fertile ground. It is the soil from which aligned intention grows. And what grows from intention lasts. This brings us to a deeper understanding of the body. The truth that the nervous system remembers what the mind forgets. We tend to assume that intimacy is primarily a physical experience. But what many do not realize is that the body carries memory. Memory that is not stored as thoughts, but as sensations, patterns, reactions. A certain touch can trigger anxiety, not because of the person giving it, but because the body associates that sensation with a memory long buried. A certain gaze can make us shrink, not because of the present, but because of a past violation that remains unresolved in the nervous system. This is where true healing in relationships begins, not in logic, but in the body. Because the body keeps score. Trauma is not just what happened to you. Trauma is also what your nervous system had to do to survive it. Shutting down, numbing, freezing, dissociating. And until this is acknowledged, no amount of talk can restore true intimacy. You cannot override the body's memory with mental effort alone. You must bring safety back to the system. Only then can the body relax. Only then can closeness be nourishing, not re-traumatizing. And this is why, before opening to another, one must learn to listen to one's own body. Where do you hold tension? What sensations arise when you are touched? Is your breath deep or shallow? Do you feel safe? Or are you merely tolerating closeness? These are not questions of performance. They are questions of presence. I once sat with a woman who described her experience with her husband. She loved him deeply, but every time they became physically close, something in her would freeze. She felt shame for it, guilt, as if something was wrong with her. But as we explored further, it became clear her body remembered an earlier time in her life, long before her husband, when boundaries had been ignored. She had forgiven the past in her mind, but her body had not yet been invited to the conversation. And this is true for many. The body needs to be included in healing. It needs to be seen, heard, and felt. Only then can it release the armor it carries. In modern psychology, this is known as somatic awareness, the practice of tuning into bodily sensation as a way to access emotional truth. It is not enough to ask, "What do I think?" You must ask, "What do I feel? And where do I feel it?" And perhaps most importantly, is this feeling from the present, or is it a ghost from the past? This is not about self-blame. It is about self-awareness, because you cannot change what you are unaware of. And without this awareness, many enter relationships where the body's memory is ignored. They push themselves to perform, to please, to prove, while the nervous system silently resists. And in that resistance, connection breaks down, not visibly, not dramatically, but subtly. The gaze becomes a little more guarded, the breath a little more shallow, the joy a little more forced. Over time, this becomes disconnection, not because love is gone, but because safety was never truly restored. And yet, when the body is honored, when space is made for its voice, a new level of intimacy becomes possible. This is why slowness is not weakness, it is wisdom. When you move slowly enough to feel, you move deeply enough to heal. A man once shared that his partner taught him more about love by the way she listened to her own body than by anything she said. She would pause if she needed to. She would breathe when emotions rose. She would cry without shame. And in doing so, she gave him permission to do the same. Her relationship with her body created a new relationship for them, one rooted not in performance, but in presence. And this presence created something rare, safety. In the absence of safety, the body armors itself. But in the presence of safety, the body blooms. And that is where true intimacy is born. Not in the climax, but in the quiet moment when the body says, "I trust this. I am here fully." The nervous system, once soothed, becomes a bridge, not only between two bodies, but between two souls. And so the invitation is simple, but profound. Before opening to another, open to your own body. Feel what is there. Hold it with compassion. Speak gently to your nervous system. Move slowly, breathe deeply. And remember, your body is not a problem to fix. It is a story to understand. Only when that story is honored can you write a new one. And in that new story, connection becomes not a performance, but a presence. Not an escape, but a return. Not a rush, but a reverence. There is a type of power that does not need to be declared. It is not loud. It does not dominate. It doesn't chase attention or demand proof. It simply is, like a mountain, silent, unmoving, unshaken, even by storm. This power resides in emotional sovereignty. Many have confused femininity with softness alone, as if true feminine energy is defined by yielding or emotional openness without boundaries. But softness without center becomes chaos, and emotion without sovereignty becomes entanglement. What transforms emotion into strength is not suppression, but self-responsibility. A woman in her emotional sovereignty knows that she is the steward of her own inner world. She does not outsource her peace to a man's presence or behavior. She does not wait for another to make her feel safe, seen, or validated. She feels fully, but she is not ruled by every passing wave. She is like the ocean, deep, powerful, rhythmic, but anchored by the unseen pull of the moon, not tossed around by every wind on the surface. Emotional sovereignty is not about being disconnected or cold. On the contrary, it allows for deep connection, precisely because it comes from clarity. When you know where you end and where another begins, you can love without losing yourself. It is easy to confuse love with fusion. Many were taught that closeness means giving all of yourself, your time, your body, your mind, until there is nothing left. But true connection is not about losing your boundaries. It's about bringing your whole self to meet another, without needing to dissolve into them. Consider a flame. When protected and fed, it gives warmth and light. But if smothered, even by too much attention, it dies. The same is true for your inner space. Emotional sovereignty is what keeps your flame steady, not flickering based on external winds, but alive through conscious tending. In relationship, this is the woman who can say yes without fear and no without guilt. She can be open, vulnerable, affectionate, yet remain rooted. She listens without absorbing. She feels without drowning. She loves without disappearing. This does not happen by accident. It is cultivated through inner discipline. Discipline in the mind to witness thoughts before believing them. Discipline in the body to recognize when emotion has hijacked safety. Discipline in speech to choose honesty over comfort when necessary. She doesn't suppress her feelings. She studies them. When anger rises, she doesn't explode. She observes. She breathes. She asks, where is this coming from? What truth is underneath it? When sadness surfaces, she doesn't collapse into despair. She welcomes it, sits beside it, learns from it. Emotion becomes a messenger, not a master. One woman described how she used to collapse at the smallest sign of rejection. A delayed text, a change in tone, a misunderstanding, and her world would spiral. She needed constant reassurance. But after years of inner work, meditation, breath work, journaling, therapy, she began to witness her emotions without reacting blindly to them. She shared, now when my partner pulls away emotionally, I no longer chase. I pause. I turn inward. I check in. I ask myself, am I safe? Am I loved even when not validated in this moment? And most times, I find yes, I am. That is emotional sovereignty, knowing that your worth is not under negotiation just because someone else is confused or distant. And this creates a paradox. The more emotionally sovereign you are, the more deeply you can connect. Because you are not attaching from neediness, but from fullness. You are not clinging, but choosing. And people feel the difference. When someone knows you are with them because you want to be, not because you need to be, it creates freedom. And from that freedom, deeper love is born. Emotional dependence is seductive. It promises safety through control. If I can manage their feelings, predict their behavior, meet all their needs, then I won't be abandoned. But the truth is, control is the opposite of love. Love grows in the soil of choice, not obligation. It requires risk, and the only way to take that risk without losing yourself is to be rooted in your own emotional center. This is not always easy, especially for those raised to believe that being a good woman means being available at all times, putting others first, never saying no. But self-sacrifice that erodes your inner peace is not love. It is self-abandonment disguised as virtue. There is a story of an elder woman in a remote village. Known for her wisdom and quiet strength, younger women would often visit her in times of heartbreak or confusion. One day, a woman arrived in tears. He doesn't call like he used to. He's distant. I don't know what I've done wrong. The elder woman handed her a pot of water and said, "Hold this over the fire until it boils." The younger woman obeyed. Minutes passed. The water boiled. "Now take it off the fire," the elder said. She did. "Now return it to the fire, but this time blow on it instead." The woman looked puzzled. "It won't boil if I just blow on it." The elder nodded. "Exactly. Passion, presence, and connection require fire, not breath alone. If he cannot bring the fire of consistent effort, your flame will die. Do not sacrifice your fire to feed someone who offers only wind." The metaphor was simple but profound. Emotional sovereignty means knowing when to wait and when to walk, when to soften and when to step away. And it requires the strength to choose alignment over attachment. It is this strength that turns a woman's presence into something unforgettable. When she walks into a room, she is not seeking permission. Her energy does not ask, "Am I enough?" It declares, "I am whole," not in arrogance, but in settled confidence. And ironically, this confidence makes her more open, not less, because she has nothing to prove, nothing to manipulate. She can simply be. There is a concept in Eastern philosophy that describes the difference between attachment and devotion. Attachment says, "I need you to be happy." Devotion says, "I choose to love you, but I remain responsible for my own happiness." One entangles, the other liberates. And emotional sovereignty is the soil where devotion can grow, because it keeps the roots strong. You are not asking another person to be your home. You are inviting them into a home you have already built within yourself. This inner home is made of rituals, breath, silence, self-inquiry, boundaries, laughter, rest, reflection. It is not just built by time alone, but by the quality of time spent in awareness. A woman once shared her morning ritual. She would wake before the sun, sit in stillness, and ask herself 3 questions. What do I need right now that only I can give? Where have I outsourced my peace this week? What truth have I avoided facing? These questions didn't always lead to easy answers, but over time, they deepened her connection to herself. And that connection became the foundation for every other relationship in her life. Emotional sovereignty is not an end state, it is a daily practice. A moment by moment return to center. A gentle reparenting of your own heart. It is the voice inside that says, even when they don't see me, I see myself. Even when they pull away, I remain here. I hold space for my own becoming. And when this kind of woman enters intimacy, whether physical, emotional, or spiritual, she does not offer herself as a gift to be taken. She offers herself as a mirror, a presence, a space of awakening. For the man who meets her with presence, her strength becomes an invitation. For the man who seeks control, her strength becomes a challenge. But either way, she remains centered, because her energy is not reactive, it is responsive. This is the power that causes trembling. Not because of force, but because of depth. The trembling comes from meeting someone who cannot be possessed, who cannot be controlled, who cannot be defined by roles or expectations. She is not here to be his woman. She is here to walk beside him, not behind, not ahead, but beside, as an equal, as a witness, as a sovereign soul. And in doing so, she teaches something many men have never learned, that love is not about control, that closeness does not require chaos, that being with a woman in her power is not about taming her, but about rising to meet her. Her presence awakens, not because she demands it, but because she is it. And the man who truly sees her will not shrink. He will rise, not because she asked, but because her very being called forth the part of him that had long slept. Emotional sovereignty, then, is not only for the woman herself, it is also a gift to the relationship. It invites integrity. It invites truth. It invites depth. It says, I am not here to complete you. I am here to meet you fully, freely, fiercely, And then in that meeting, something sacred begins. We often speak of intimacy as something physical, of touch as the language that unlocks desire. But the truth is, it is not always the touch that awakens a man, it is the presence behind the touch. That invisible, undeniable quality of being fully there. Unwavering, unapologetic, undistracted. Presence is not about doing more, it is about being more fully here. And when you are truly present, undivided, emotionally rooted, spiritually aware, you don't need to reach out to be felt. You are felt. The mind may forget what was said. The body may forget what was done. But the soul never forgets how it was seen. That seen, pure, spacious, clear, is what causes trembling. Because presence reveals, it strips away the layers people wear. It doesn't demand. They simply see themselves more clearly in your presence. And that, for many, is both terrifying and beautiful. Have you ever been looked at in such a way that you couldn't hide? Not because the person accused you of anything, but because they held such a steady gaze, such silent awareness, that all your masks felt suddenly unnecessary. That's the power of presence, not as performance, but as truth, as a transmission of stillness. Presence is not reserved for spiritual teachers or meditation masters. It lives within every human being who learns to rest attention inward and offer it outward without condition. It begins very simply with slowing down. We are often tempted to fill silence with words, moments with movement, space with stimulation. But in doing so, we miss the richest parts of connection, the gaps, the pauses, the quiet moments where nothing is said, but everything is felt. A woman shared her story after years of surface level intimacy. She had been praised often for her beauty, her charm, even her sensuality. But something always felt incomplete. It was as if the men she attracted were responding to the image of her, not the essence of her. Then, after a long journey of self, reflection and solitude, she began practicing a simple ritual before every intimate moment. Emotional or physical, she would stop, breathe, close her eyes, and ask herself, am I here? Not out of performance, not for him, but for her. Over time, she noticed something extraordinary. Without changing how she looked or spoke, her presence deepened, and the response was unmistakable. One man wept during their first deep conversation, saying, I don't know why, but it feels like you're hearing the part of me I usually hide. She wasn't trying to impress. She wasn't offering more touch. She was simply present, and that stillness, that grounded awareness, created a space safe enough for vulnerability to emerge. Presence disarms because it is free of agenda. It's not trying to be desired. It's not trying to be right. It's not even trying to connect. It just is. It meets the moment as it is. And that radical acceptance softens the walls people didn't even know they were holding up. In neuroscience, presence is closely tied to a concept known as co-regulation. This refers to the way nervous systems interact with each other, particularly in moments of emotional or physical closeness. When one person is deeply present, calm, and grounded, the other person's nervous system begins to mirror that state. Their heartbeat slows, their breath deepens, their defenses drop. This means your presence doesn't just affect the other person emotionally, it affects them physiologically. You become a regulating force in their body, their brain, their entire experience of connection. This is why someone who is deeply present can be more arousing, more inspiring, more memorable than someone who is merely performing affection. Because the body knows the difference between being touched and being felt. And being felt begins long before physical contact. Imagine walking into a room and someone turns to face you, not with hunger, not with expectation, but with attention. Pure, open, grounded attention. No rush, no masks, just presence. That gaze alone can make the breath catch. Why? because we live in a world starving for attention. Most people are only half listening, half seeing, half feeling. They are looking at you through the lens of their own unmet needs, their mental distractions, their internal noise. To be looked at without distraction, even for a few seconds, is one of the most intimate experiences a human being can have. It's not about seduction. It's about witnessing. And that witnessing is what makes a man tremble, not because he is overwhelmed by desire, but because he is overwhelmed by being seen without judgment. When a woman is rooted in herself, when her energy is calm and clear, when she brings that inner alignment into every interaction, she becomes magnetic. Not in the shallow way people use the word, but in the deepest sense. She draws people into the present moment with her. She invites them to return to themselves by the sheer force of her presence. It is said that in the presence of a deeply embodied woman, a man remembers the parts of himself he had forgotten, and this remembrance brings trembling, not always visible, but real, a kind of internal shift, a softening of armor, a trembling of the soul, not in fear, but in recognition. Many people confuse this trembling with seduction, but it is not about being seductive. It is about being so here that others cannot hide from themselves when they are near you. Presence is not something you put on. It is something you return to. You cultivate it through awareness of breath, of posture, of emotion, of sensation. You strengthen it through attention, how deeply you listen, how honestly you feel, how gently you observe. You protect it through boundaries. What you say yes to, what you say no to, what you allow to enter your sacred space. And most importantly, you preserve it through silence, through time spent alone, in nature, in meditation, in stillness. For it is in stillness that presence is refined. There is a story of a woman who practiced this intentionally. She would take long walks in the forest every morning, not for exercise, but for integration. As she walked, she would place her attention on every step, every bird song, every shift in the wind. Her mind would wander, and she would bring it back, again and again. Over months, she noticed a shift, not in her appearance, not in her voice, but in her field. People around her began saying things like, "I feel calm when I'm near you," or "You have a grounding presence." She hadn't changed her job, her clothing, or her habits. She had changed her state, and that state radiated. In relationships, presence becomes the invisible thread that holds two people together, even in silence, even in conflict. When you are present, you listen not just to words, but to the spaces between them. You feel what is unspoken. You hold the other without trying to fix them. And in that holding, something sacred emerges. Presence does not mean perfection. It does not mean never being distracted or upset. It means returning again and again to the moment, to the breath, to the truth. In physical intimacy, presence transforms everything. It slows down time. It deepens touch. It turns closeness into communion, because it is not about performance. It is about sensation. And sensation can only be felt when we are here. A rushed caress, a mechanical kiss, a distracted glance, they don't touch the soul. But a slow, attuned breath shared between two bodies in silence can speak volumes. It can undo years of numbness in a moment. This is why the trembling often comes before the touch. Because the body senses what the mind cannot articulate. It senses your intention, your awareness, your presence, and presence in its purest form says, "You don't need to be anyone else right now. You are safe to be seen. You are safe to feel." This safety is rare, and that rarity makes it unforgettable. A woman who carries presence into her relationships doesn't need to chase validation. Her energy speaks before her mouth does. Her calmness invites honesty. Her stillness invites depth. Her silence becomes a container in which truth